My name is Daniel Reyes. I'm 34 years old, and I live in Denver, Colorado. 3 years ago, I helped build a company from nothing but an idea and a handshake. Today, in that same boardroom, the people I trusted most stood up and called me worthless in front of everyone. What they didn't know was that I owned the company they were sitting in. If someone had told me a year ago that my own business partner would try to erase me from the company I built, I would have laughed in their face. But betrayal doesn't knock before it enters. It walks in wearing a smile, sits across the table from you, and calls itself a friend. This is the story of how I lost everything I thought I had, and how I got it all back, quietly, one signature at a time. 5 years ago, I was just an engineer with a laptop and a dream. I met Marcus Hale at a small startup meetup in downtown Denver. He had the charm, the connections, the polish. I had the product. Together, we built Halewell Logistics, a small freight tech company that helped local businesses ship smarter and cheaper. We were a good team. I trusted him completely. When we needed funding, I put in almost everything I had saved. Marcus brought in investors. On paper, we were 50-50 partners. In spirit, I thought we were brothers. For 3 years, we grew that company from 4 employees to almost 60. We celebrated every milestone together. His family came to my birthday dinners. I stood beside him at his wedding. I believed, with my whole heart, that loyalty was the foundation we built on. I never once imagined that foundation was already cracking beneath my feet. It started small. Marcus began scheduling meetings without telling me. Emails I used to be copied on stopped reaching my inbox. When I asked about it, he'd laugh it off. "Don't worry about the small stuff, Daniel. Focus on the product." Then the tone in meetings shifted. Investors started addressing him first. Decisions were being made before I even walked into the room. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself this was just growth. Companies get busier. Communication gets messier. But deep down, a small voice kept whispering that something wasn't right. One evening, I stayed late reviewing our shareholder documents, something I rarely did, since Marcus always handled the business side. That's when I noticed something odd. A private equity firm I didn't recognize had been added as a minority stakeholder 6 months earlier. I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't even been told. I confronted Marcus the next morning. He brushed it off as restructuring for growth, insisting it didn't affect my position. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But the red flags kept piling up. My name was quietly removed from the company's public leadership page. My office was moved from beside his to the far end of the building. Junior employees started asking me if I was still with the company. Then came the day that broke something in me. I found out through a former colleague that Marcus had been in private talks to sell a controlling stake of Halewell Logistics, without informing me, without my signature, without so much as a phone call. The man I called my brother had been planning to cut me out for months. I sat in my car outside the office that night for almost 2 hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in silence, replaying every late night, every handshake, every promise Marcus had ever made me. I thought about my father, who used to tell me, "Son, the people who smile the widest are sometimes the ones holding the sharpest knives." I never understood that until now. For the first time in years, I felt truly alone. Everything I built, the sleepless nights, the risks, the sacrifices, felt like it was slipping through my fingers while the person responsible smiled at me across a conference table. But somewhere in that quiet, aching moment, something else began to stir. Not rage, not the urge to scream and fight, something colder, something patient. I decided I wasn't going to beg for what was mine. I was going to prove it. The next morning, I called an old friend from law school, a corporate attorney named Priya Shah. I laid everything out, the missing paperwork, the new investor, the secret meetings. She asked me one simple question that changed everything. "Daniel, do you have your original founding agreement?" I did. Buried in an old filing cabinet, untouched for years, was the original incorporation contract Marcus and I signed the very first year. Priya reviewed it carefully, then looked up at me with something between shock and disbelief. "Daniel, your founding agreement gives you a majority voting share in any decision involving ownership transfer. Marcus never had the authority to bring in outside investors without your written consent." In his rush to push me out, Marcus had forgotten the one document that mattered most, the one that proved I still held the real power in Halewell Logistics. I didn't want to destroy Marcus. I wanted the truth to stand on its own, in front of everyone who had underestimated me. So Priya and I built a plan, quietly, over the following weeks. We gathered every document, the founding agreement, the unauthorized investor contracts, email trails showing Marcus deliberately hiding information from me. Priya prepared a formal legal notice, ready to be filed the moment I needed it. I kept showing up to work like nothing had changed. I smiled in meetings. I let Marcus believe he had already won. Every dismissive comment he made, every whispered joke behind my back, I absorbed it all and quietly filed it away as proof of exactly who he really was. The board meeting where he planned to formally announce the new investor deal and remove me from operations was set for the following month. That was the moment I chose. In the days before the meeting, I met privately with two of our earliest employees, people who had been with us since day one and had grown suspicious of Marcus's recent behavior. They agreed to quietly support me once the truth came out. Priya filed a discreet legal motion, timed to become active the morning of the board meeting, formally freezing any ownership transfer until my signature was verified. I printed copies of the original founding agreement. I organized every email, every hidden contract into a single folder. I rehearsed exactly what I would say, calm, clear, without a trace of anger. Marcus had spent months planning my exit. I had spent weeks planning the truth. The board meeting began exactly as I expected. Marcus stood at the head of the table, confidently announcing the new investment deal, casually mentioning that some internal roles would be restructured going forward. Then he looked directly at me and said the words I'll never forget. Daniel's contributions have been valuable, but it's time for fresh leadership. The room went quiet. I stood up slowly, opened my folder, and placed the original founding agreement on the table. Before we continue, I said calmly, I think everyone should see this. I explained point by point how the investment deal Marcus was presenting had never been legally authorized because it required my signature, which he never had. I showed the emails proving he had deliberately hidden information from me for months. I showed the legal notice Priya had already filed, freezing the transaction that morning. Marcus's face went pale. The investors exchanged uneasy glances. One of the board members finally spoke. Marcus, is this true? He had no answer. By the end of that meeting, the deal was suspended pending a full legal review. Within weeks, Marcus's unauthorized actions cost him his position on the board entirely. I didn't have to raise my voice. I didn't have to humiliate him further. The truth did all the work. I want to be honest with you, there was no joy in watching Marcus lose everything. Betrayal doesn't heal just because justice arrives. It leaves a mark. But I learned something valuable through all of this. Loyalty isn't proven by how loud someone celebrates you when things are going well. It's proven by how they treat you when they think no one is watching. I kept the company. I rebuilt the leadership team with people who valued honesty over ambition. And every time I walk into that boardroom now, I remember that quiet moment in my car, the moment I chose patience over anger and truth over revenge. If there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this. Don't rush to fight back when you're betrayed. Gather the truth. Stay calm. And when the moment comes, let the truth speak louder than you ever could.